Welcome back. All right, so smaller players. I'm going to talk about this today because after yesterday, when I did the Connor Bedard video, there were immediately comments along the lines of, well, yeah, but he's 5'10", so I don't know if he's going to make it. You know, the NHL, it's a tough league, and if you're under 6 feet tall, I don't know. I feel like over the last, I'll say 5 years, players have proven that being 6 feet and taller doesn't necessarily mean you excel. Being under 6 feet doesn't mean you don't. And so I went through lists of players and pulled up anybody under the height of 6 feet, keeping in mind there are going to be players who are listed at 5'11 who may not be, players listed at 5'10 who may not be. And you'll hear this during conversation about players like, well, you know, this guy's listed as 5'11, but I saw him in the hallway before the game and he might be 5'8. And this is common. Hockey players will tend to want to, lean towards being taller because they know. They know that if they say, yeah, no, I'm 5'6", you're not going to get drafted. So I'm 5'8". Well, you're still small, but I will give you a look. When in reality, they're not. And this happens, the fudging of the numbers. So what I've got on the board here is the reported heights. And I went with the notables here. And especially when it comes to defensemen, because there is a belief you have to be a certain height to play in the NHL. And I know this is not a new concept, but I feel like it is one that might be, set to be retired within reason, right? So Arvidsson's at the top of the board. These are in alphabetical order. 5'10" for Arvidsson, 77 games with LA this year, 26 goals, 33 assists, 59 points. I have been a fan of Arvidsson's since he debuted with the Nashville Predators. I remember that one playoff run and how well he played, and then the offense showed up the following regular season. It was wonderful to behold. But there's Jesper Bratt as well. And what's interesting is a lot of these guys will get drafted later, and their height might be a reason why. The other thing that's interesting is that if a player's, say, 6'4", 6'5", and their skating mechanics are they're a little bit shaky, they'll probably still get taken relatively well. But if you're smaller and your skating mechanics are a little bit shaky, you drop quickly in the draft. Because I do hear that a lot of, how did this guy fall in the draft? Well, look at their height, and then look up scouting reports and see if there's anything about their skating isn't elite. You have to be an elite skater if you're smaller, or NHL scouts will probably lean in another direction. So for Bratt, 32 goals, 41 assists was very good. He had a really strong start to the season, but overall his numbers were good. Cole Caulfield, 5'7". We know Caulfield dropped in his draft year during that draft because of his height. Teams were like, nope, we're not taking him. He's too small. 46 games this year, 26 goals, 10 assists, 36 points. The interesting thing is, whenever a player who has a smaller stature gets hurt, there will be people who will pile on and go, see, he's too small. But usually when you see the injuries, if it's like a knee ligament, groin pull, shoulder separation, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with them being smaller. And it's rare for me to see an injury and think, well, that wouldn't happen if he was taller. So I do think that there's too much given to this idea that, well, they're too small. There are players who wear down. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with height. There are just players who they get hurt, they get worn down, maybe they get an injury in their early 20s and never quite heals up properly, and then it just adds on and adds on and adds on. Now, Sidney Crosby, that's the Crosby jersey, is 5'11". He's 1 inch taller than Bedard. So, in 82 games this year, 33 goals, 60 assists, 93 points. Sidney Crosby, age is not a concern. But I do remember when Crosby was drafted, and there was some talk about, well, he's got too much hype. He's not going to live up to the hype, right? Behind all of the, I can't believe they go from Mario to Crosby, this is all set up and fixed. Which, you got to play the hits, right? So, at any rate, Crosby has had last I looked, one of the best careers in the history of the National Hockey League. And if somebody wants to explain why Bedard being 5'10 and Crosby being 5'11 means that Bedard immediately isn't going to hit at the NHL level, I'd love to hear it. But Crosby, too, when he had the concussion issues, I remember hearing, well, he's too small. That's how it is. He's a smaller player. If he was bigger, if he packed on some extra weight, and yet he hasn't got any taller in his mid-20s to early 30s, but he's been healthy. He didn't miss a game this year. Alex DeBrincat, 5'8". That's why he dropped to the second round, because I get that question a lot. Why did DeBrincat drop? Why didn't anybody take him in the first round? because he's 5'8". And I remember ranting about that because Chicago got to draft him in the second round. 82 games this year, 27 goals, 39 assists, 66 points. Not bad considering he was on a new team where things didn't work as well as they did for him in Chicago. And so for DeBrincat, who's got some decisions to make this summer, I don't think the amount of money that he's going to get on a long-term extension, wherever that may be, will be affected by his height. He's not going to go out there and say, well, I could have got $8 million plus, but I'm 5'8", so I took 5. That's not, no. Max Domi, 5'10", 80 games played in the regular season between Chicago and Dallas, 20 goals, 36 assists, 56 points. Domi's bounced around, but Domi is tough. He takes some questionable penalties. Gonna be honest, as a Dallas fan, I've seen that. But nobody will say he's not tough, and no one will say he can't play the NHL game. We could have the debate over his upside and how good he could be or where he should be in a scoring race, but yeah, he's an NHL player. Matt Duchene, 5'11", 71 games, 22 goals, 34 assists, 56 points. We've talked plenty about Duchene. He was near the top of his draft class. Jordan Eberle, he was a first-rounder as well, 5'11", 82 games, 20 goals, 43 assists, 63 points. One of the smaller forwards for Seattle. Seattle's got a good mix, though. This is not the only Seattle player that's on the board either. Kevin Fiala, 5'10", 69 games, 23 goals, 49 assists, 72 points for LA. I think Kings fans have been happy with Fiala when he's in the lineup. Adam Fox. So Fox is where things get interesting. He's 5'11", and I remember not too long ago that having a defenseman under 6 feet tall, it's not a good idea, right? Defensemen, if they're too short, they're going to get run over. You know, the big forwards are going to come in on them. Fox, 82 games, 12 goals, 60 assists, 72 points, and he is a finalist for the Norris this year. Adam Fox is legitimately a very solid two-way defenseman. He defends just fine. Him being under 6 feet tall hasn't negatively impacted him in any way that I've seen. And so, yeah, the idea that you can't have a defense that's below 6 feet tall, I feel like that's being knocked down a little bit every year in the NHL. Brendan Gallagher, 5'9" this year, limited with injuries, 37 games, 8 goals, 6 assists, 14 points. I don't know that Gallagher being smaller means that he gets hurt. I think it's the style of hockey he plays. Now, if you want to make the argument that it's combined with his height, you can try that. But for me, I would just say that it's his style. I wouldn't say it's because of his height. Yanni Gourde, also 5'9", 81 games, 14 goals, 34 assists, 48 points, and has played quite well for Seattle this year. Is one of those players that Tampa Bay has absolutely missed since he left. So Seattle has some good smaller forwards. Jack Hughes, and also Yanni Gourde plays bigger than his size. Jack Hughes, 5'11", 78 games, 43 goals, 56 assists, 99 points. It is heartbreaking he didn't reach 100 points, but he's going to. Luke Hughes isn't on the board because he's obnoxious. He's over 6 feet tall. But Quinn Hughes is on the board. He's 5'10". So again, defenseman below 6 feet tall. 78 games, 7 goals, 69 assists, 76 points. Quinn Hughes is legitimately one of the best defensemen in the league, and him being below 6 feet, I don't think has negatively impacted him. And I think his defense has gotten better over the last couple of seasons. Then you got Patrick Kane, also 5'10". Maybe this is why I always hear the Kane comparisons with Bedard, because to me with Bedard, the goal scoring is a little bit better than what we saw with Patrick Kane throughout his career. Kane more of a passer, so maybe it's the height, but for Patrick Kane, 73 games, 21 goals, 36 assists, 57 points. He is older. His production is dropping off. He's a free agent this summer. But Patrick Kane, if he wants to play for another 2 or 3 years, there will be teams lining up for his services. Kirill Kaprizov, 5'10", 67 games, 40 goals, 35 assists, 75 points. No one will argue that Kirill Kaprizov is not a superstar, and I don't think that you're going to see Minnesota saying, well, we have to trade Kaprizov, he's too short. So he gets paid quite well, and again, 5'10", you wouldn't know the difference. Clayton Keller, 5'10", 82 games, 37 goals, 49 assists, 86 points, and a Masterton finalist. Comes back from a pretty gnarly broken leg and has the best season of his career. Arguably the best season anybody has in an Arizona jersey since Keith Tkachuk. I would say since Keith Tkachuk. So yeah, Keller, height hasn't been a problem for him. Travis Konechny, 5'10". 60 games this year, 31 goals, 30 assists, 61 points. When playing, he was very, very good. Torrey Krug, 5'9", 63 games, 7 goals, 25 assists, 32 points. Nightmare season for Torrey Krug. Not going to try to butter this up and say, well, he'll bounce back in St. Louis. I don't know. That was a rough year for Krug. He was probably happy when it was done. But it's not because of his height. Any issues he had this year, I really don't think are related to his height. He does have 5-on-5 issues. We know he's good on the power play, 5-on-5. It's a mystery what you're going to get from one game or one shift to the next. Nikita Kucherov, 5'11", 82 games, 30 goals, 83 assists, 113 points. So that's the 100-point scorer on this list, although there are others who could have gotten there and were close. But Kucherov, of course, a couple of Stanley Cup rings, so being shorter doesn't mean you don't win the Stanley Cup. And he's also got other hardware to his name. And again, 82 games this year. Cale Makar, 5'11". He and Sam Girard both below 6 feet. So Colorado breaking that standard that usually it's a bigger defense that ends up winning that Stanley Cup. But Makar, 60 games, 17 goals, 49 assists, 66 points. Arguably the best defenseman in the league. I say arguably because I would argue it, and other people will argue with me. But Makar, absolutely fantastic player. Brad Marchand, 5'9", 73 games, 21 goals, 46 assists, 67 points. I don't think Marchand is going to be back in the 90-95 point range for the rest of his career, but he's still a very good point producer. He's a leader for the Bruins. He's a very, very controversial figure, of course, in hockey, but Marchand is also a really good forward. He's dynamic, and he does a little bit of everything. Jonathan Marchessault is also 5'9", plays well for Vegas. 76 games this year, 28 goals, 29 assists, 57 points. He's consistent, he's very good, and has been for a long time. Dmitry Orlov, another defenseman, 5'11", 66 games combined between Washington and Boston. 7 goals, 29 assists, 36 points. Had a fantastic run with Boston there. Now as a UFA this summer, we'll see what he commands on the market. Braden Point, another Tampa Bay Cup winner, another forward considered to be very tough, who's also 5'11", 82 games, 51 goals, 44 assists, 95 points. So you have a 50 goal scorer, 100-point producer, another one here with 99, another one with 93. They're able to produce just fine, being shorter and all that. And Braden Point's, and I said this before, I'll say it again, one of the quieter 50-goal seasons I can remember, where Point gets to 50 goals, I'm like, right, yeah. He produces so well and so consistently, it was easy to kind of overlook. Lucas Raymond, 5'11", a bit of a sophomore jinx for him this year in Detroit. Played 74 games, 17 goals, 28 assists, 45 points. Jeff Skinner, very up and down, but Jeff Skinner over the last couple of years has really brought it. And he's found some consistency from year to year. I think it's the between two stalls. I think that's what's done it for him. But 5'11", 79 games, 35 goals, 47 assists, 82 points. So above a point per game. I think arguably had his best season in his career this year with Buffalo. And he's getting better as he gets older. So that's another thing too. That's that whole, well, you wear down. Not necessarily. You have to have good conditioning. You have to be a smart player. You do have to keep your head up when you're a smaller player. But they're kind of used to that. It's not like for Bedard, he's playing in juniors with a bunch of guys who are 5'5" and 5'6" either. He's still playing with guys taller than him. Jared Spurgeon, 5'9", another defenseman. 79 games, 11 goals, 23 assists, 34 points. Judging by the fact he's a captain, judging by his contract, both the length and the amount of money on it, Minnesota doesn't mind that he's a smaller defenseman and doesn't have a problem paying him thusly. Then at the bottom of the board, you got two guys who are 5'8", starting with Kyler Yamamoto, 58 games, 10 goals, 15 assists, 25 points. Not producing the way as he was expected to when he was drafted. I don't know how much of that has to do with his size. Now, one thing I want to throw in here too is you'll notice the weights aren't on the board. There is definitely something to the idea that if a player is shorter and a lot lighter, doesn't have the muscle mass, they could very well have some struggles at the NHL level. I'm saying could because there are guys on this board who are on the slight side when it comes to their build. But you do need to bulk up a little bit. Being smaller, absolutely. And for Yamamoto, that may be part of it. The trick is this, though, when you're adding that weight, you also want to make sure it's not affecting your mobility. So it's, if you're built like a tank, but you skate like a tank, that's not great. So that's one of those balancing acts. I think with Yamamoto, his size may have impacted him to this point in his career. And so We'll see if anything with that changes over the next couple of years. Matt Zuccarello is also 5'8", 78 games, 22 goals, 45 assists, 67 points. And again, with Zuccarello, he's been playing a long time. He has had injuries over the years, but 78 games this year, not bad, considering he's one of the older players in the Minnesota Wild's organization at this point, and he's done well. So I just wanted to do this to kind of underline the fact that there are plenty of players below 6 feet tall who have excelled in the National Hockey League. There's a superstar named Crosby, just below 6 feet tall, who's excelled in the National Hockey League, and I don't think it has to be an impediment. You do have to be aware of where the big guys are on the ice. You do have to be aware that there's other guys taller than you, but that's the thing. It's not like any of these players were 6'5" yesterday and just woke up and went, "Hey, I'm 5'9". What am I going to do?" They've played their whole career at this size, so they know how to play the game and they know how to play it at a very high level. One thing working Bedard's favor, he has played international tournaments. He has played against men in various forms of hockey, and so yeah, I think that this is going to work out pretty well for him. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.